George.
And together, we are AGMagicians.
Wow, wasn't that creative?
I know, very original. As George very subtly just hinted, the second episode, my god, how do we do it? This episode, we're going to be talking about creativity. Let's start with a definition of creativity, or what does it actually mean to be creative?
It means not doing the same thing as before.
Okay.
Or being creative, being original, being new, novel.
Doing stuff that you haven't done or tried or even seen other people do before.
Or bringing two different things together.
Absolutely.
Such as rubber and cement.
To give us
Glue.
basically.
Yeah.
So that's one of the big foundational, fundamental aspects of all this sort of stuff. Creativity, for us at least, and again, there's loads of other probably different definitions of creativity, and if we were more professional, we'd have probably researched this ahead of time.
But that wouldn't have been being creative.
Would it not?
Because being creative is doing things on the spur of the moment. If we'd taken somebody else's definition,
We wouldn't have been creative.
and therefore it wouldn't have been a creativity definition.
So now all of this is being creative.
And we've just got rid of dictionaries
Absolutely.
because they're not creative.
But that is going back to my original point. That is a big fundamental part, is that creativity is about combining two different things in new ways, in ways that are unexpected, in ways that are unfamiliar.
And that's why we love magic, because that's what magic does.
What?
It creates a new state, a state of being mystified. And to do it, we have to be creative.
We do. We have to think outside of the box. But
We haven't even got a box.
no.
Well, we have got a box.
Do we?
Yes, that's what the microphone's on.
Oh, don't give away don't give away behind the scenes.
That's been creative.
We're being
Otherwise, we'd have
professional.
had to have levitated it up.
True.
And we can't do levitation because I dropped out of levitation school. It's a state. It's a state of being, and that's the thing about being creative. Mm-hmm. That's the thing what we love about magic is we're creating states in people, whether you call it an amazement state, an amused state, mystified state, or just complete dumbfounded. It's a state. It's not a trait.
So what is a state versus a trait?
So a state is a recipe we can change. We're not born uncreative, boring, staid, repetitive. Although we may have evolved to be that. But we're not it naturally. Naturally, we're always seeking novelty. So the state is something that changes. A trait is something which is static. So the size of my ears are a trait. And no matter how much I practice pulling them or trying to push them back in,
Or flatten them.
or do anything else with them, they are still there. My ears are not a state. However, our magic and what we create with our magic are states of mind.
Okay. So, for people listening
With their ears,
with their ears,
which are traits.
in whichever trait state
But you're
the ears
thinking
are in.
about it with your mind, which is creating a state.
Okay. So for people listening, some practical stuff for them to take away, I think, is this idea that we're not born uncreative. We are naturally creative creatures.
We are. And our most creative state is when we're about 3, 4, 5 years of age. At that point, which psychologists, we call it neoteny.
If we are in this neotenous state, our mind is effectively entirely open to new ideas, entirely open to creativity, entirely open to running with our imagination. And as we get older, a lot of people tend to lose that. But it never actually truly disappears, does it?
No, it's still there. And the state that we really, really love getting people into is the state of wonder. Take yourself back to 4 years old and the state of wonder at everything. Lots of things were new, novel. It was wondrous. and it's actually taking you back, and appreciating that state of wonder is one of the things we love in magic.
Absolutely.
And of course we can make it funny, humorous, enjoyable. These are part of the chemistry, the electrical activity, and the chemistry that makes a state in our brains. And if we get the creative state, that neotenous state, that state of wonder, we can actually make differences. We can create different things in the world, and we can all do that.
One of the things that we teach on our training courses and in our coaching is actually how do you get back into this creative state, into this imaginative place of wonder and joy and creativity. Now, on our Instagram post a couple of days ago, we talked about smart, deliberate practice. If you want to get into a creative state, if you want to be in a place where you can draw things like no one's ever thought about, or make incredible music, or paint things, or create things, or again, come up with different ways of doing the same magic tricks, but ways that will be completely original and fooling, you have to get into this creative state. So, how do you actually get into a smart, deliberate practice habit around creativity?
You take the number 9 bus.
Okay, that's always
That's how
good.
you always travel to a different state.
Right.
No, we're not in states.
We're not in states.
County. You travel to a different county.
It's not helpful.
But just like getting on a bus, we have our own determined routes. They only go in certain places. And what you have to do is to be able to break out of those routes. Because the more you do something, the easier it is to keep doing it. Remember, we've evolved to actually survive. Not to think, but to survive.
What's the difference?
We also have batteries. We survive. So we're taught to do the simplest of things. We're taught, and we've evolved to conserve energy. Because we do have batteries. We need feeding. And we're effectively lazy. We will reduce our energy consumption any way we can. Just like the number 9 bus, the new green one. It will conserve energy, but it will go on one route. So to break away from that, we have to find new things. That's quite commonly called novelty. We have to do new things. We have to break our old habits.
And break the patterns.
And sometimes that means going off route. Sometimes it means pushing your boundaries, exploring new roads, new places that we can actually go. And that's what we like about magic. For most people, they've just seen magic, sometimes on television. But to actually begin to understand how you can do it yourself is quite new. And that's what creates the new pathways.
But there's a slight danger in this. And this is where, I suppose, the nuance and the experience over time comes in. Because sometimes you can be too new. Sometimes you can be too out there. Sometimes you can create things that no one has any idea about, basically spouting gibberish.
And going ahead of your time. Like Einstein and various people.
Yes.
Who were way ahead of the time. Nobody understood it at the time. And now most people still don't understand it. Although we do say we do. Stephen Hawking, he created all these things. He's got one of the best sellers of all time.
Yes.
That nobody's ever read.
But he's still being very creative.
And this is what we call Maya, which is
most advanced yet acceptable. MAYA.
How good is that? You could even think that was being creative.
Nearly.
But what that means is it pushes us to our boundaries. Explore the boundaries. But not, as Alex said, way, way, way out. Go to the most acceptable. And for us, as Alex has said, during our coaching shows and everything else, doing magic and learning about how to do magic or mind reading or doing this, understanding the various deceptions that these magicians have done in the past is an acceptable level. It is acceptable because it's within the realms of psychology. We understand it. When Darren Brown says this is all about psychology, magic, we know what psychology means. It's advanced, but it's still acceptable. So we can use that to push our boundaries, but still pursue something that's new, and that's where the power is. Then the wonderful thing that happens is, just because you're pursuing magic doesn't mean that that's where the creativity stops. Because we have another wonderful thing called a neural net, which means that if we're being creative in one area, it fires off creativity in lots of different areas. So it spreads.
It does. We have a practical exercise for you to do. Basically, this is a thing that we were taught, 10 years ago?
I don't even know what you're going to say, but there you go.
Well, you should know what I'm going to say.
There it is on the script that we don't have in front of us because we're being creative.
We have worked this out in a lot of detail. About 10 years ago or so now, a magician called Jeff McBride, he's a very popular Las Vegas magician, at least when Vegas was sort of working every night instead of what state it is in now. He came and he taught us this exercise about...
Nevada.
Stop it. He came and he taught us this exercise about creativity, about script creating, about what we have ended up enhancing and calling concept clashing. Take an A4 sheet of paper, draw a line pretty much exactly down the middle, as straight as you can, although we're being creative, so you might want to go a little bit crazy.
And do a squiggly line.
Divide it in half, basically. On the left-hand side, write down concepts. So it could be hobbies, it could be things that you want to do, it could be things that
interest you.
Anything that basically acts as a abstract concept. Now on the right hand side, write down subjects that you would either like to present, that you would like to write about, things that you might want to do a magic trick about, anything like that. Once you've got probably about 15 at least
on each side,
turn the paper over so you don't know what's where. Close your eyes, take your pen and start drawing lines roughly somewhere, so you start on the left, finish on the right hand side, or whichever way around you want to do. By the time you're done, you're going to start to have things that are completely random matches. So for instance, you could have the history of con artists in the 1920s and a routine that we talked about last time, say like the cup and ball. And with that, you get this script about the fact that con artists were playing things like thimble games and all that sort of stuff on the streets in the 1920s, and you go from there.
Or you could just take it something random. So, con artists and Daleks. You could combine the two.
Yes.
So what do you get? Instead of a Dalek which keeps exterminating you, you get a Dalek which is deceiving you.
Oh.
I deceive you, I deceive you, I deceive you. Deceive you, deceive you, deceive you. What do you then end up with? Criminals!
Ah, fair enough.
Dalek criminals.
Dalek criminals.
Mastermind Daleks.
The ones who are exiled even from the psychopathic Dalek race.
They are, because they're the criminal Daleks. And therefore you've got a whole new concept now for a Doctor Who episode.
Yes.
Of the Doctor helping the standard Daleks get rid of the really evil Deceptionists or Decepticons. That's
a different science fiction show altogether.
However, this sticky thinking and these activated lines that you can go down the spreading activation model, which maybe we'll talk about another time, can lead you into all kinds of creativity.
Absolutely.
Whether it's about scripting, presenting, thinking about advertising ideas. Just go with the flow, as Checkman Harley used to say.
In a very quick summary, you can be creative. You don't have to be a professional artist or a musician or singer or magician or anything like that. Anybody can be creative. But you have to be willing to go back to that imaginative state called neoteny. You also have to be willing to push at the boundaries, but maybe not too much. And finally, to get your creative juices flowing, try concept clashing. Try bringing together different concepts, different ideas, seeing what comes up with.
That's it. So, creativity is a state you can generate. It has to be worked on, but you can do it, especially if you're creative.
Absolutely. Thank you for listening to this probably quite long, slightly rambling talk about creativity, although, I don't know, if you were being creative, if you'd expect anything less. If you like this, leave a like, subscribe, and we'll do some more of this sort of stuff.
See you next time, or hear you next time with my ears, which are a trait.
But we don't hear what? I'm so confused. Bye!